let's lay the groundwork real quick, which is just basically... Hold on. Okay, let's lay the groundwork real quick. If you haven't heard, like, what's been going on in the recency of, like, the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of talk about teams wanting to either dissolve or change heavily the import rule. The import rule, for those who don't know, basically requires that you have homegrown talent and a resident-based players to play on your team. Requires that you have 3 of them. There are a couple of ways that people got around this with, like, grandfathering before it came in, or becoming, like, an actual resident, as in getting, like, a green card and stuff. You can then also be considered a resident. So basically what's happened is LCS teams have stated that they want to remove the import rule, which obviously had a lot of backlash. I've never seen a community quite as united as before as against this as they are, and obviously LCS owners are very frustrated in this sense. So because of that, Andy, the owner of Reginald, did some dumb tweets and shit like that, but I'm mostly just going to talk about his points and reasoning behind and thought process behind everything. So let's just jump right into it, right? Which is, he apologizes or whatever. So his first targeting point is going to be 3 teams have already significantly made cuts to their budget, which is basically him referencing the fact that LCS teams have started to cut their budgets, and that it is a sign that teams are already feeling like the value or the valuation of their spot in the LCS is relatively worth less, like it's depreciating, and that people are already uninvesting. So first off, I want to talk about this. This was just basically a really a really lame and like disingenuous way of framing information, because he was basically trying to convey that tax or budget cuts equals not interested in investing in the scene, which is actually just a straight up lie, because of the fact that most of the teams that actually cut their budget were cut because of the fact that their owners were cutting costs in general due to COVID. COVID obviously causes it, so, you know, people can't go to events such as sports teams. So like the Golden Guardians and the Golden State Warriors, right, obviously, lost a lot of their revenue last year because of the fact that, well, people couldn't attend their events. And if people can't attend their events, that is a large portion of a team's income, is like actually selling tickets, doing, selling like the vendor food and stuff like that. So because of that, in general, COVID just caused budget cuts. It's not like a very specific, LCS value has gone down. Yeah, it'll be on YouTube. Oh, the LCS value will go down. So because of this, we're going to cut back spending. That being said, I'm sure that some teams probably looked at some of their spending and felt like it was a bit too much, and they probably adjusted in spending where they could in general. Because I think player salary is a bit too high. But that is not the point. The point is that basically he already opens up by basically disingenuously presenting information, trying to imply that it is something when it's actually not, and I don't like that. I don't like that when people obfuscate information and say that this information becomes this, or tries to cause you. Maybe he doesn't specifically say that, oh, look, they're not investing because the valuation is low, but he's trying to imply it, right? It's very clear that he's trying to imply it, and I don't like that, and I think that's really disingenuous when it comes to giving up information. Next is he talks about how the LCS does poorly at international events. I would say that in general, you're not going to all of a sudden be able to pull over a Dom 1 Gaming or something like that, even if the import rule was removed. We've seen in most cases, by the way, that when we import players, we usually import not great or players who are at their peak and are going on a downward trend. There's exceptions to this rules, obviously, like Core JJ has been a great import. I think Impact has been a great import. PoE has been too. But there's been a lot of duds. Like, I want that to be very important, like very understood the entire time, that there were so many imports that were quite awful. And the reason that import rule is there is also because there's an implicit import bias, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but I just want to lay the groundwork for it, which is that if 2 players are equal in skill level, then what will end up happening is that most people will lean towards the import, because if he's from a different region, he must be better. This is a really toxic behavior that has happened basically throughout all of LCS, and it's why we've had so many not successful imports come over here and look really bad. Also, I would say that a lot of imports are used to a certain structure that is not provided in NA between the ping and the infrastructure in terms of coaching and the relative practice regimen. Because of all these things, we've actually seen huge declines in people who were actually exceptionally good when they come over to NA LCS. Great example, this is Crown. Anyway, this is a really important thing because, like, even if you unveiled the import rule, the likelihood that this means that all of a sudden really strong import-based teams do well is actually very much false. And in fact, the highest and the best run we ever had was with literally NA amateur talent when C9 went to the semifinals. Just want to point that out too. But I do move to this point, which is player base. Obviously, the LCS and in general the NA talent pool is way smaller. True, it's totally facts. It's a reasonable, presentable thing to state. But I think this has a defeatist attitude. Because of the fact that there are less people, it means that you just don't get to pick up people that are instantaneously good. So basically what Reginald is saying is he can't have a blabber every year that he gets to pick up and like mold and make. He has to actually has to unrough like some of the edges of players. This is why, by the way, that the pipeline for pro is really, really important, and we'll be talking about this throughout it. And I'll reference pipeline. Pipeline just basically means the pathway to pro. The pathway to pro needs to be well lined out, and we'll compare it to other scenes as we go along with this, so that because you have such a lower player base, you need to make sure that you're getting good value out of potentially not the most insanely good gems. And that means that your infrastructure needs to be good, which is something NA doesn't have and didn't bother doing, even though we did franchising just for that exact fact. But I do agree that you have less players. That's fair. Then he also stated about how he was investing like over $1 million in Academy. This is really also disingenuous because I'm pretty sure that the salaries for a couple of his players are what eat up most of this, and they're actually not amateur players. They're like 6th and 7th man rosters, which is Cody Sun and Haunter, in case like any of his pieces were bad. This is a really also disingenuous way to present this information just because of the fact that he isn't really spending all that money on like developing people. He's mostly spending it on maintaining rosters or maintaining the players that fetch a high salary. So then he says ocean, other regions have an ocean of talent. And he talks about how the LFL has way higher peaks than Academy. So this is mainly a problem that's just basically divergent of the fact that we don't invest time and energy into growing the Academy. How many pieces of content have you heard about Academy or amateur players, right? None. There's none of it. None of it is done. I think a lot of times, even LCS teams don't do a good job of really bolstering up and making their players very interesting to follow or empowering them in this sense. And because of that, an NA Academy gets lower peak viewership. True. Totally true. That's also just because of the fact that in Europe, I would tend to say that they just have a lot more regional pride. So, like, French people love watching their French teams play. I encountered this when I did like coaching for a couple of academy teams in EU, just in general, that the regional leagues do really well just because there's a lot of regional pride. Whereas the States just don't have that as like as just like a social structure. So that's just going to always happen. But sure, you can present that as an obvious thing. All right, so next I want to talk about is this crap right here, which is the approximate ping for pro players. This stuff boils my blood because of a couple of things. Number one, we set up an in-house system where pros could quite literally type !Q and their role, and a bot would assign them to a team and make rosters. We did this. Literally, it is actually unequivocally the exact same thing as queuing up for solo queue, but it is with lower ping. Well, guess what? Pro players used this for like 5 days, stopped playing, and then they cannibalized the rosters on the solo queue rosters, and then eventually they never played anymore. So I can't accept this. I 100% mentally can't handle this. I can't handle this at all because the ping issue, while I understand it's like frustrating for other regions to have it, we gave solutions that fixed this and they didn't use it. They didn't use it. No one used this. So you can't blame Ping if you don't use the resources for it. Also, we went out and we got special permission from Riot, the Golden Guardians team did, to have invites for people that you thought were promising. So LCS teams could even invite people that weren't LCS/Academy teams to the Tournament Realm. I have a Tournament Realm account from the in-houses. So you can't tell me that you don't have enough players and that you can't tell me that you can't deal with ping, because that is crap. That's a horrible excuse. I hate this excuse. I hate it. Even though it's something people reference all the time, we gave solutions to this. Players wouldn't use it. So you can't use this as an excuse. That's crap. That's bull crap. For sure. When stronger players come from other regions, they have to train on higher ping environment and have longer queues. You don't. Gave you the solution to that. So I really hate this as an argument for sure. Oh, I must have missed something actually right here. Oh, I wanted to see this. Where is the we see the same faces requalifying for scouting grounds? Oh, I mostly just responded to this. I don't know where it is here. Maybe I passed it or something. But I wrote down that we see a lot of the same people like requalifying for scouting grounds. The reason why like a lot of people requalify for scouting grounds is because they have no other thing. Like if you want to go pro, you basically have to go through the pipeline of social climbing. Straight up. Like I don't know how else to explain this, but like if you want to go pro right now, like you have to social climb. If you are not on an academy team, you do not make anywhere near a livable wage. And if you don't make a livable wage, you can't keep playing. I don't know why people think that like it's just totally okay to make $0 while trying to make something out of yourself, because if the pipeline isn't good, then people just take other routes, because it's just stupid to play and put all that time and energy into something and gain no value from it, which is why the pipeline is so problematic. I literally played, okay guys, I played in the amateur pipeline, right? I played in the amateur pipeline with a team. It was me, Peckin, Chris, Potluck, and Vincent. We were the best team, and we didn't even practice. We were the best team when we didn't practice. We won all the LAN events. We were top 2 in all the internet tournaments, right? And I got paid a salary of $300. $300 a month. That was my salary. We were the only team, by the way, that got salaried. We were the best team, only salaried team. $300. What? Like, how? Like, what? Why would I do that? Why would I keep doing that? You know what I mean? Why would I continue doing that? And if you don't get an academy offer, then like you've just wasted your time. And this is why the pipeline is so garbage in NA, because of the fact that if you just aren't playing on academy, you just don't make money. So like, oh, I guess you can just only go pro if you're just a rich player. Like if you're just rich and you can just afford to like take $0 for a full year or two, like that's insane. Like what kind of maddening stuff is that, where like you're just like totally cool with the fact that, yeah, like if you want to go pro, like you just have to have literally like your parents just have to like hard carry you through life. Like you can't actually like go pro if you want to go pro, because there's just no guarantee. Like straight up, if like you look at the power level of even just the academy teams, a lot of those academy teams are straight up just getting owned by amateur teams. But the amateur teams make no money. Like, I played in Rivals, guys. I played in Rivals. 2 Rivals tournaments made more money than winning every tournament in Amateur for over a year. What is that? Like, that doesn't make sense. Teams are currently investing at a major loss because we want to make our mark on the global stage and prove that LCS is still Premier League for our fans, when the LCS was the great. Okay, yeah, basically it was just Reggie saying that like we're operating in a loss the entire time, but the reason why he's operating in a loss is because he spent $6 million on a player. Like, he just dumped a bunch of money on people that, like, he shouldn't. Like, LCS in general just has a tendency to just throw money at it and just hope that it works. And it's really, really bad. And basically, like, that's one of the problems. Also, he changed his number, by the way. Teams will often give up on world aspirations and focus on regional competition, leading to drastically lower salaries across the board. Well, yeah, because you spend too much. I don't understand. Like, in general right now, I would definitely say that, like, LCS players are paid too much. Or there's too much variance in LCS payer salaries. Like, it's actually very common for literally a team to have someone who's like 100, 200K, and then a 500 to like 800 to even a mil, like on the same team. I think that's just like crazy how like rosters are built where like your percentage budget isn't like well spread out over players. And then he talks about how like a bunch of teams have already scaled back their investments. Yeah, because they're actually trying to invest in NA talent though. Like, if you don't like watching like Immortals or GGS, that's totally fine. But like what they're doing is they're playing a long game, not a short game. Like, I don't think that what the problem I have with most LCS teams is they're very short-term solution. Like, if you can't be a world's caliber team, why would you spend a bunch of money when you should be developing new players? And then I wanted to talk about this, okay? Which is, in addition, there have been some concerns with any change of the rule. There would be less representation of NA talent in the LCS, and it will have an adverse effect on viewership. Most people on, at least on Reddit, tell me that they won't watch LCS if it's a full Chinese team. Totally fair. I don't believe this to be the case. You're out of touch. First, elite local talent such as Spiga, Tactical Blabber, and Vulcan, and the new up-and-coming talent will find their way onto teams as long as their skill is comparable to the global counterparts. So I want to talk about this. This is actually my favorite part of the entire thing because this is a mentality that a lot of people have that I really feel like I need to dispel. Players aren't instantaneously good. They have to go through a lot of trial and error, and they have to do a lot of growing. Okay? And a lot of times, the best players on the best teams are there because of luck. I know that's like a really hard thing for people to settle on, but they worked hard, don't get me wrong, but a lot of things in their life had to go really right for them to be where they are. Vulcan's actually a great example of this, and a lot of people on Reddit even said it too. So, if you guys didn't know, Vulcan was trying to go pro like as far back as 2013, 2014. He didn't even find a team till Academy opened with Scouting Grounds in like 2018 or 2019. So he wasn't even good for like 5 years. I want that to settle in. Like 4 to 5 years, he wasn't even good. And then, even afterwards, when he played in Academy, I would say that he was also fortunate enough to play with Piglet, who is basically a Ling Kingdom player who probably molded and impacted Vulcan's growth like a substantial amount. Even if any of you guys seen the interview with Revenge said basically most Academy teams don't even have staff that teach you. So I could easily argue that if Vulcan didn't join a team with Piglet, Vulcan probably would never even be the same skill level he is now, and he definitely wouldn't have been playing on LCS stage. Also, when he started playing, he wasn't good, actually. He was actually pretty mediocre to bad. It wasn't towards the tail end of the summer split when they did the Worlds run that anyone even thought Vulcan was doing good. Me included. So, like, this thought process that, like, oh, yeah, if you're good, like, you'll just make it is crap. It's actually such a lie. It's such a lie. There's so many random factors that go into a career of a player, even if they do work hard, that could definitely derail them at any point in time. And if there's active barriers such as, oh, this team is full Chinese, like they all speak Chinese now, or Mandarin, there's no reason to even try out a North American speaking player. And remember what I've already laid the groundwork with, right? Which is that everybody thinks imports are better than not imports instantaneously. That is a implicit bias on regional play. Is an import player is always better than a non-import player. And there is no tryout periods for any players that ever occurs. So this is crap, by the way. This is straight up just a lie. Like, it's just so out of touch. It's so disingenuous. It's just bullcrap. Like, it's not okay to say this, too. Because if you genuinely believe that, then you're even more out of touch with what goes on, like, in a player's career nowadays than you've ever have been. And the fact that I think that a lot of LCS orgs share this sentiment is astounding and terrifying at the same time. Basically, the next part that I want to talk about is the cannibalization of player base. So, remember what I talked about where, like, playing an amateur isn't even worth your time, and if you don't get an LCS Academy offer, you basically make no money, right? Well, guess what? There are other paths in NA that aren't, like, regional league for EU, which we'll compare in a second, which is what I tell everyone to do now. It's actually not worth it to try to go pro anymore because of the fact the pipelines are bad. If there's not a guarantee that your efforts and skill will actually be acknowledged and you'll play on teams, then you shouldn't actually pursue it even if you think you could make it. Because of the fact that that's just dumb. Like, you're going to gamble away, like, time and life and livelihood for nothing. The options that are available for a lot of other people in the North American ecosystem is collegiate. It's super easy to join. Like, you basically have to be like Diamond or Masters to get like a full ride scholarship right now because everyone's hot on it. And usually collegiate teams have budgets that allow them to have multiple teams. So even if for whatever reason someone better comes along, usually you aren't out of a job, which is something that occurs quite frequently just in going pro in general. And sure, some people will say like, oh yeah, well that's just like how it is. But at the end of the day, going from like being able to self-sustain yourself to literally being teamless and you get zero income is too much of a steep drop. And that's one of the biggest problems that I have with it is there's not linear bumps for like people who get bumped off of teams. And it's really problematic because that's scary. Like you have to, like, I feel like no one understands this, but like you have to make money. People who play in the ERL, like they still have a house to like game in, like they're still making some salary, etc. Like they can pay for stuff. Whereas like you just can't do that in NA amateur at all. And so what happens is that a lot of players, when they see the pipeline that's terrible, which is the LCS fault, by the way, it's all the LCS owners' fault because they don't have good pipelines right now. And even if they have rosters, they have bad coaching staff. So even if for whatever reason players join teams, it doesn't matter because their staff is underdeveloped for most of these teams. So that even if they're on a team, they won't learn a lot and won't grow a lot. Remember what I told you, right? There's so few players that you need to get value out of all of these players. And if you're not by having bad understaffed like teams, then you're going to do everything you can to just push them away. Another option too is literally people who go to streaming. Like there's a lot of people that just didn't pursue pro play and just went to streaming anyway. Because of the fact that like it's just better and more consistent income. At the end of the day, like, I feel like a lot of people don't realize this is a job. And, like, at some point in time in life, like, you have bills to pay and stuff. It's just really weird having this conversation. But, yeah, this is, like, kind of, like, this is all, like, comparative to the problems that basically are systemic from the LCS teams, which is that we have a bad pipeline because there's not, like, a good path to pro that's very consistent and logical. Because of that, people are actively discouraged of trying to go pro, so they seek other pipelines that are more guaranteed, like streaming or going to collegiate. And so because of that, we honestly cannibalize a lot of potential in players, and because of that, we are never like having a lot of people ascend to higher levels because of the fact that that we are not utilizing the players at the amateur level. Was there anything else? No, this is just me going on a tangent about players players that he listed as like random players that could do everything. So yeah, real problems in NA. Pipeline to pro is broken / bag. Marketing of players is terrible. People don't release compelling content that introduces or shows off the personality of players. This is both for LCS and Academy. Too few scrims. I actually feel like teams don't scrim enough anymore. I heard that they literally moved to 1 best of 5 a day. That's insane. Like, that's such a low amount of games. Like, it's actually crazy. Then in-houses aren't utilized because of the fact maybe they even need to be mandatory if you actually care about ping. You can't tell me that you care about ping, but then you don't use the tools that, like, solve ping problems. Salary variance is way too big, by the way. Some players will literally make, like, half or 1/5 of the salary of other players. And also this is really important because that means most of your budget is in your players, not in your staff. So like we have really underdeveloped staff because of the fact that there's no money in being a staff worker. And so because of that, we have a bad pipeline for growing like players in general. And then, yeah, I feel like monetization just like didn't happen. I thought for sure that like when the LCS moved to franchising, there would be like lots more drops for like merch and content, or even like player negotiated player skins. Like I thought there'd be a double if like Vayne skin or something like that. It just feels like if you want to make more money, like use the valves available to you. Doesn't seem like there are any. They're done. Anyway, like that's like pretty much it. Like I think that for the most part, like I think most LCS teams are pretty diluted on like what they're doing with their like franchising spot. And it's really their fault for the most part. Like they asked for franchising so that they could develop NA talent, and like academy teams don't even have competent staff yet, and we're like 3 years into franchising, right? It's pretty crazy. And right now, yeah, amateur doesn't give you enough money. And a lot of that is because of the fact that like there's just no money to be had in it, and that's because it's not adequately like invested in and not advertised very well. I've watched some of the academy tournaments that aren't on the academy stream, or even on the academy stream. They get like 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000 viewers. Like it's actually just, it's a waste of money. You know what I mean? So that's like a big problem too. So yeah, those are my thoughts on like Reggie's thoughts. I really super disagree with like everything. It's mostly all of their faults because they don't invest actively into the NA talent to actually utilize their low player base, and they don't force their players / utilize the tools that they have to solve like and combat a lot of problems such as the ping. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment in the section below, and hit that bell and whistle, and see you next time.